What if the worst investment anyone ever made turned out to be the greatest miracle of their life? A teenager bought an abandoned ranch for $3 at a tax auction. The place was worthless, a graveyard of rust and decay. But when she arrived to claim her bargain, she found something impossible waiting. A skeletal mare, alone, starving, refusing to leave a collapsing barn. This wasn't just a horse that had been forgotten. This was a horse standing guard. What that mare was protecting, and the heartbreaking secret buried in the wreckage, would shatter everything the girl thought she knew about loss, loyalty, and the lengths a mother will go to save what she loves. This is a story that will break your heart and rebuild it. If you believe in the unshakable bond between horses and the people who need them most, please hit that like button and subscribe. It truly helps our channel grow and find more stories just like this one. The town of Copper Falls, Montana, was a place that had given up on itself. It was a skeletal community of boarded-up storefronts and peeling paint, a town where the mining company had pulled out 30 years ago, taking the jobs, the hope, and most of the population with it. What remained were the stragglers, the too old, the too broke, the too stubborn. The wind off the distant mountains was constant and cold, carrying the smell of pine and the faint metallic bitterness of abandoned mine shafts. The sky was a pale, washed-out blue, enormous and indifferent. The land around the town was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way. Rolling hills covered in dry grass, thick forests of lodgepole pine, and the bones of old homesteads slowly being reclaimed by the earth. 17-year-old Cora Bennett sat in the back row of the county courthouse, her hands folded in her lap, trying to make herself invisible. The room smelled of old wood and stale coffee. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a greenish, sickly glow. Around her, men in work boots and stained jackets leaned back in creaking chairs, flipping through auction catalogs, circling lot numbers with chewed pencils. They were here for equipment, for land, for anything they could flip or scrap. Cora was here because she had $3 and nothing left to lose. Her mother had died 6 months ago. Cancer. It had been fast and brutal, a wildfire that consumed everything. The medical bills had taken the house, the car, the furniture, everything. Cora had been shuffled to her aunt's place, a cramped apartment in town that smelled of cat litter and resentment. Her aunt made it clear she was a burden, a mouth to feed, a problem. Cora had stopped going to school. She worked nights at the gas station, stocking shelves, mopping floors, counting down the days until she turned 18 and could leave. But leave to where? With what? She had nothing. The auctioneer, a bored man with a nasal voice and a coffee-stained tie, droned through the lots. Farm equipment, defaulted mortgages, tax liens. No one was paying attention. These were the dregs, the properties so worthless even the county didn't want them. Lot 73, the old Mare Ranch, 15 acres, structures in disrepair, no water rights, no utilities, seized for unpaid taxes. Opening bid, $3. The room was silent. A few men glanced at the photocopied map in the catalog, then looked away. It was junk, a liability. Cora's hand went up. It was an impulse, a stupid, reckless, desperate impulse. She didn't know why. Maybe because $3 was all she had. Maybe because the idea of owning something, anything, even a pile of rotting wood, felt like having a future. The auctioneer blinked. Going once, going twice, sold. Lot 73 to the young lady in the back, $3. A few men chuckled. Cora's face burned. She walked to the clerk's table, her legs shaking, and handed over 3 crumpled bills. The clerk, a woman with tired eyes and nicotine-stained fingers, slid a deed across the counter. "Congratulations. It's yours. Don't say we didn't warn you." Cora folded the paper and walked out into the cold, bright afternoon, clutching the deed like a life raft. She had no idea what she'd just bought. She had no idea what was waiting for her. 2 days later, Cora stood at the rusted gate of the property, staring at the ruins of her $3 investment. The gate hung crooked on one hinge, the metal so corroded it crumbled under her touch. The driveway, if it could be called that, was 2 parallel ruts overgrown with weeds and scattered with rocks. She could see the barn in the distance, a sagging skeleton of gray wood, its roof caved in on one side. Beyond it, the skeletal frame of a house, Windows shattered, porch collapsed. The wind moved through the tall, dry grass, making a sound like rushing water. It was desolate. It was worthless. It was hers. She had borrowed her aunt's truck, lying about where she was going, and driven the 12 miles out of town on a dirt road that hadn't been maintained in years. She'd brought a backpack with a flashlight, a bottle of water, and a hammer. She didn't know what she was going to do. Maybe take photos. Maybe see if there was anything worth salvaging. Maybe just stand there and feel like she owned something. She walked up the rutted drive, her boots crunching on the gravel and dry weeds. The air smelled of sage and rot. The sky was cloudless, the sun a cold white disk. The barn loomed larger as she approached. It was bigger than she'd expected, a 2-story structure with a hayloft and wide double doors that hung open, one door missing entirely. The wood was bleached bone white in places, blackened and water-stained in others. She stopped 10 feet from the entrance. She heard something, a sound, low, rhythmic, breathing. Her heart kicked hard against her ribs. She took a slow step forward, peering into the shadowed interior of the barn. The smell hit her first. Manure, decay, and something else, something alive. Then she saw it. In the dim light filtering through the gaps in the roof, standing in the back corner of the barn, was a horse, a mare. She was skeletal. Her ribs were visible beneath a dull, matted coat. Her hip bones jutted out like knives. Her head hung low, her eyes half closed, her legs trembling. She looked like something that should have been dead months ago. Cora's breath caught. Oh my God! The mare's ears flicked forward. Her eyes opened fully, dark and exhausted, and she stared at Cora. She didn't move. She didn't whinny. She just stood there, her body positioned directly in front of a collapsed stall, blocking it, guarding it. Cora took a cautious step inside. The floor was rotted and uneven, scattered with debris, old hay, broken tools. The mare shifted slightly, her head lowering, her nostrils flaring. A warning. "Easy," Cora whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you." The mare's body was shaking, not from fear, from exhaustion, from starvation. She looked like she was standing through sheer force of will. Cora's mind raced. How long had this horse been here? The ranch had been abandoned for at least 2 years, maybe longer. How had she survived? There was no water, no food, no shelter from the winter. It was impossible. The mare took one unsteady step to the side, still keeping herself between Cora and the collapsed stall. Cora moved closer, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. She could see the stall now. The door was broken, the walls caved in. And inside, half buried in rotted hay and splintered wood, was something small, something still. Cora's stomach twisted. She crouched down, her hands shaking, and carefully pulled aside a piece of wood. It was a foal, tiny, curled on its side, its eyes closed, its coat a soft, downy chestnut. It wasn't moving. Cora's throat closed. She reached out, her fingers brushing the foal's neck, and it twitched. Its tiny ribcage expanded, a shallow, fragile breath. It was alive. Barely, but alive. Cora's vision blurred with tears. The mare had been standing guard, not over a memory, over her baby, a baby that should have died weeks ago. The mare had kept it alive, somehow, against every possible odd. Cora looked up at the mare. The horse was staring at her, her dark eyes filled with something Cora recognized. Desperation, pleading, a mother begging for help. "I see you," Cora whispered. "I see you. I'm going to help." She didn't know how. She had no money, no resources, no experience. But she knew, with a certainty that burned in her chest, that she couldn't walk away. Not from this. Not from them. Cora ran. She stumbled out of the barn, her legs shaking, her breath coming in ragged gasps, and ran back to the truck. Her hands were trembling so badly she could barely grip her phone. She had no service. She drove 3 miles back toward town until a single bar flickered to life. She called the only person she could think of, Doc Harlan. He was the town's large animal vet, an old man who'd been working out of a garage for 40 years. He answered on the 5th ring, his voice gravelly and annoyed. "This better be good." "There's a horse," Cora gasped, "and a foal. They're dying." "Where?" The old Merrick place. Doc, they're starving. I don't know how they're even alive. There was a long pause. The Merrick place has been empty for 3 years. There's no livestock out there. There is now, Cora said, her voice breaking. Please. 30 minutes later, Doc Harlan's battered truck pulled up the rutted drive, a trailer rattling behind it. He was a tall, lean man in his 70s, his face a landscape of deep lines and sun damage. He moved slowly, but his hands were steady. He took one look at Cora's face and didn't ask questions. Show me. They walked into the barn together. Doc stopped in the doorway, his eyes adjusting to the gloom. He saw the mare. He went very still. Sweet Jesus. The mare was still standing in the same spot, her head low, her body trembling. Doc approached slowly, his hands raised, speaking in a low, calm voice. Easy, girl. Easy now. The mare's ears pinned back, but she didn't move. Doc knelt by the foal, his hands moving over its tiny body with practiced efficiency. He was quiet for a long time. Cora could hear her own heartbeat, loud and painful. This foal is maybe 3 weeks old, Doc said finally. It's severely malnourished, dehydrated, hypothermic. It shouldn't be alive. How? Cora whispered. Doc looked at the mare. Her. She's been feeding it, keeping it warm. He shook his head. I've been doing this for 50 years. I've never seen anything like this. That mare weighs maybe 600 pounds. She should weigh 1,000. She's given everything she has to keep this baby alive. Can you save them? Doc didn't answer right away. He stood, his knees popping, and moved to the mare. He ran his hands over her neck, her ribs, her legs. She didn't fight him. She just stood there, swaying. The mare needs fluids, nutrition, rest. The foal needs the same, plus intensive care. I can try, but Cora, this costs money. I know you don't have it. I'll find it, Cora said. I don't know how, but I'll find it. Doc looked at her. He saw something in her face, the same desperate determination he'd seen in the mare's eyes. All right, let's get them out of here. Loading the mare and foal was a careful, agonizing process. The mare was too weak to walk far. Doc backed the trailer as close to the barn as the terrain allowed. He set up a makeshift sling to support the foal, wrapping it in blankets, and carried it to the trailer himself. The mare followed. She was unsteady, her legs shaking, but she followed. She would not let her baby out of her sight. Doc set up an IV line in the trailer, running fluids into the mare's neck as they drove. Cora sat in the back, holding the foal in her lap, feeling its tiny heartbeat flutter against her hands. It was so fragile, so impossibly small. At Doc's clinic, a converted barn behind his house, he worked. Through the night, Cora stayed. She held the foal while Doc tube-fed it a careful mixture of electrolytes and colostrum replacement. She stood by the mare's head, whispering to her, while Doc administered fluids and vitamins and antibiotics. The mare's eyes never left the foal. By dawn, the foal was breathing easier. The mare was standing on her own, her head low but alert. Doc sat down on a hay bale, his face gray with exhaustion. They've got a chance. Not a good one, but a chance. Cora's eyes burned with tears she was too tired to shed. Thank you. Doc looked at her. You know this isn't over, right? This is just the beginning. I know. You're going to need feed, supplements, vet care, time, money. I know. Why? Cora looked at the mare. The horse was resting her muzzle gently on the foal's back, her eyes half closed, finally allowing herself to relax. Because she didn't give up, Cora said. So I can't either. The first week was a battle fought in hours. Cora moved into Doc's barn. She slept on a cot in the tack room, waking every 2 hours to check on the foal, to adjust blankets, to help Doc with feedings. She called in sick to her job. Her aunt left furious voicemails. She ignored them. The foal, a filly with a white star on her forehead, was too weak to stand on her own. Cora and Doc took turns supporting her, helping her nurse from her mother. The mare's milk production was dangerously low. Doc supplemented with bottles, and slowly, painfully, the filly began to gain weight. The mare, who Cora had started calling Anchor because she had refused to be moved from her post, was a different challenge. She ate. She drank. But she wouldn't rest. She stood over her filly, her eyes open, her ears swiveling at every sound. She was vigilant, terrified that if she closed her eyes, something would take her baby. Cora understood. She sat with Anchor at night, her hand on the mare's neck, whispering, "It's okay. You can rest. I've got her. I promise. I've got her. On the 8th day, the filly stood on her own. It was wobbly, her legs splayed out like a newborn deer, but she stood. And Anchor, for the first time since Cora had found her, closed her eyes and slept. Cora sat in the straw, tears streaming down her face, watching them. But the bills were piling up. Feed, medications, Doc's time. He hadn't asked for payment, but Cora knew it was coming. She was 17. She had no money, no credit, no options. She lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling of the tack room, her mind churning. Then, on a cold morning, 2 weeks after the rescue, a truck pulled into Doc's driveway. A woman got out. She was in her 50s, dressed in jeans and a canvas jacket, her graying hair pulled back in a braid. She walked with the confident stride of someone who'd spent her life around horses. Doc met her at the barn door. They spoke in low voices. Cora watched from inside, her stomach tight with anxiety. The woman walked into the barn. She stopped when she saw Anchor and the filly. Her face went very still. "That's her," the woman said quietly. "That's Stella." Cora's heart dropped. "You know this horse?" The woman nodded. "Her name is Stella. She belonged to my neighbor, the Mareks. They lost their farm 3 years ago. Foreclosure. They tried to take all the animals, but Stella was pregnant and too close to foaling. They left her, said they'd come back. They never did." Cora felt a cold anger rising in her chest. "They just left her?" The woman's face was grim. "People do terrible things when they're desperate. I didn't know she was still out there. I thought she'd died." Cora's voice was shaking. She almost did. She kept her baby alive. For weeks. The woman looked at Anchor, her eyes filling with tears. She was always a good mare. Strong, loyal. She deserves better than what she got. Cora's hands clenched into fists. "She's not going back. I own that land now. I bought it. She's mine." The woman looked at her, surprised. Then she smiled, a small, sad smile. "Good. I'm glad." She walked over to Anchor, moving slowly, letting the mare see her. Anchor's ears flicked forward. She remembered. The woman ran her hand down Anchor's neck, her touch gentle. "I'm sorry, girl. I'm so sorry." Then she turned to Cora. "My name is Ruth. I run a small rescue about 20 miles from here. If you need help, feed, advice, you call me." She handed Cora a card. Cora took it, her throat tight. "Why?" Ruth looked at the filly, now standing on steady legs, nuzzling her mother. "Because not enough people fight for them. You did. That matters." The filly grew stronger. Cora named her Dawn because she had been born into darkness and survived to see the light. Dawn was curious, bright-eyed, and brave. She explored every corner of the barn, her tiny hooves clattering on the concrete, her mother watching with patient, tired eyes. Anchor was healing too, but slowly. Her ribs were still visible, her coat still dull. Doc said it would take months, maybe longer. Cora spent every free moment with them. She brushed Anchor's coat until it began to shine. She sat in the straw with Dawn, letting the filly nuzzle her pockets, looking for treats. She read to them at night, her voice filling the quiet barn. It was the first time since her mother died that Cora felt like she had a purpose. But her aunt had reached her limit. She showed up at Doc's barn on a cold afternoon, her face tight with anger. "You need to come home. Now. I'm not leaving them. You don't have a choice, Cora. You're 17. I'm your legal guardian, and I'm done." "Done with what?" "Done with you," her aunt snapped. "I didn't sign up for this. Your mother left me with nothing but debt and you. I've tried, Cora. I've tried. But you don't go to school. You don't come home. You're obsessed with these animals. I can't do this anymore." Cora's voice was cold. "So, what are you saying?" "I'm saying there's a group home in Helena. They have a bed. You're going." Cora felt the ground drop out from under her. "You're sending me away." Her aunt's face softened just slightly. "It's not forever, just until you turn 18. Then you can do whatever you want. But right now, you need structure, rules. I can't give you that." "What about them?" Cora gestured to Anchor and Dawn. "What about my ranch?" Her aunt laughed, a bitter, exhausted sound. "Your ranch?" "Cora, that place is a dump. You can't live there. You can't fix it. You're a kid." Cora's hands were shaking. "I'm not leaving them. You don't have a choice. Doc, who had been standing in the doorway, stepped forward. "Actually," he said, his voice calm, "she does." Both women turned to look at him. "She owns that property, free and clear. If she can prove she's capable of managing it, she can petition for emancipation." Her aunt's face went red. "She's 17. 17-year-olds can't live alone. They can if a judge says so," Doc said. "And if she's got a place to live, a way to support herself, and a responsible adult willing to vouch for her, she's got a shot." Cora stared at him. "You'd do that?" Doc looked at her, then at Anchor, then back at Cora. "You saved their lives. I figure you've earned the chance to save your own." The legal process was slow and brutal. Cora had to prove she could support herself. She had to show the court that the ranch was habitable, that she had income, that she wasn't a danger to herself. Her aunt fought it, not out of love, but out of pride. But Cora had allies. Doc testified. Ruth testified. Even the clerk from the auction, who barely remembered her, signed an affidavit confirming the sale. And Cora worked. She took every shift she could get at the gas station. She cleaned houses. She mucked stalls at Ruth's rescue in exchange for feed. She saved every penny. Ruth helped her draw up a plan. The ranch house was a loss, but the barn could be repaired. With work, with time, with help. Ruth brought volunteers, people from her rescue, people from the community who had heard Cora's story. They came on weekends with tools and lumber and sandwiches. They patched the roof. They replaced rotted boards. They cleared debris. Slowly, impossibly, the barn became a shelter. Not perfect, not pretty, but solid, safe. On a cold morning in early spring, 3 months after she'd bought the ranch, Cora stood in front of a judge. She wore a borrowed dress. Her hands were shaking. The judge was an older woman with sharp eyes and a skeptical expression. She reviewed the file. She asked questions, hard questions. "Why do you think you can do this?" "Because I have to," Cora said. "Because if I don't, they'll take the horses. They'll send me away, and I'll have nothing." The judge looked at her. "You're 17. Most kids your age are worried about prom. I'm not most kids." "No," the judge said. "You're not." She signed the order. Emancipation granted. Cora walked out of the courthouse, the paper in her hand, and sat down on the steps. She cried, not from sadness, from relief, from exhaustion, from the overwhelming weight of being free. That night, she moved into the barn. She set up a cot in the tack room. She hung a lantern. She laid out her few possessions, a photo of her mother, a blanket, a book, and she sat in the straw, Anchor's warm breath on her shoulder, Dawn asleep at her feet, and felt, for the first time in months, like she was home. The ranch became Cora's entire world. She woke before dawn, fed Anchor and Dawn, mucked stalls, repaired fences. She worked her shifts in town, then came home and worked until dark. She was exhausted. Her hands were calloused and scarred. Her back ached, but she was building something. Ruth stopped by twice a week, bringing feed, advice, and sometimes just company. "You're doing good, kid," Ruth said one afternoon, watching Cora hammer a loose board back into place. "Better than good. You're doing what most adults couldn't." Cora wiped sweat from her forehead. "I don't have a choice." "You always have a choice," Ruth said. "You're choosing this. That's different." Dawn, now 3 months old, was thriving. She was strong, playful, fearless. She galloped around the small paddock Cora had built, her legs long and awkward, her mane a wild tangle. Anchor watched her, no longer gaunt, no longer trembling. She was still thin, but her coat had a shine. Her eyes were bright. She was healing, but the ranch was still fragile. One bad storm, one injury, one unexpected cost, and it would all fall apart. Cora lived with that fear every day. Then, in late spring, a man showed up. He was in his 40s, dressed in clean jeans and a button-down shirt. He drove a new truck. He walked up to the barn, where Cora was repairing a stall door, and introduced himself. "My name is James Caldwell. I'm a land developer. I'm interested in your property." Cora's stomach tightened. "It's not for sale." He smiled. "I understand, but I'd like to make you an offer anyway. Hear me out." She didn't want to, but she was curious. She set down her hammer. "I'm listening." He pulled out a folder. "I'm acquiring land in this area for a housing development. Your property is right in the center of my plan zone. I'm prepared to offer you $50,000. Cora's breath caught. $50,000. It was more money than she'd ever imagined. It was college. It was security. It was a life. What happens to the ranch? Cora asked. We'd clear it, James said. The structures are unsalvageable anyway. We'd subdivide the land into lots, build homes. And the horses? James hesitated. You'd have to relocate them. I'm sure you could find a facility. Cora looked at Anchor, standing in the paddock, her head over the fence, watching. She looked at Dawn, lying in the sun, her legs tucked under her. She looked at the barn. Her barn? The place she'd fought for. The place that had saved her. No? James blinked. Excuse me? No, Cora said. It's not for sale. He frowned. Miss Bennett, I don't think you understand. $50,000 is a generous offer. For land like this, it's more than fair. I understand, Cora said, and my answer is no. He stared at her. Then he nodded, his expression hardening. All right, but I'll be back. People like you always change your minds. He left. Cora stood in the yard, her heart pounding. She'd just turned down more money than she'd ever seen, and she had no idea if she'd made the right choice. Summer came. The land turned green and alive. Cora planted a garden. She fixed the fence around the entire property. She built a second paddock. Dawn was growing fast, her body filling out, her legs strong. She looked like her mother, the same deep eyes, the same quiet intelligence. Cora started working with her. Gentle training, leading, basic commands. Dawn was smart. She learned fast, and she trusted Cora completely. Anchor watched, her expression calm, approving. She had given her daughter to this girl, and the girl had not failed her. But the developer, James Caldwell, kept his word. He came back, once a month, always polite, always persistent, always raising his offer. 60,000, 70,000, 80,000. Cora said no, every time. But the pressure was building. She learned from Ruth that Caldwell was buying up the surrounding properties, offering people more than their land was worth. Most were selling. The area was changing. And Cora's little 15-acre ranch was right in the middle. One afternoon, Ruth sat with her on the porch of the barn. You know he's not going to stop, Ruth said. I know. You could take the money, buy a bigger place, somewhere safer. Cora shook her head. This is where I found them. This is where they survived. I can't leave, even if it means losing everything. Cora looked at her. I've already lost everything. This is what I built back. Ruth was quiet. Then she nodded. All right, then we fight. But the fight got harder. The county rezoned the area for development. Suddenly, Cora's ranch was subject to new codes, new inspections, new fees. She got letters, notices, warnings. Her barn wasn't up to code. Her water system was illegal. Her fencing didn't meet standards. Each violation came with a fine. Cora couldn't pay them all. She fell behind. She got a notice. If the fines weren't paid within 30 days, the county could seize the property. She sat on the floor of the tack room, the letter in her hand, and felt the walls closing in. She'd fought so hard, and it wasn't enough. Then, 3 days before the deadline, a truck pulled up. It wasn't Caldwell. It wasn't the county. It was a news van. A reporter got out, a young woman with a camera crew. She walked up to Cora, her expression determined. Are you Cora Bennett? Yes. I'm doing a story about people being pushed out by developers. I heard about your situation. I'd like to tell your story. Cora hesitated. Then she looked at Anchor and Dawn. Okay. The story aired 2 days later. It was 5 minutes long. It showed Cora, 17 years old, living alone in a barn, fighting to keep a ranch she'd bought for $3. It showed Anchor and Dawn. It told their story. The Mare who had kept her baby alive against impossible odds. The girl who had saved them both. The developer who was trying to take it all away. The response was immediate. The local news picked it up. Then the state news. Then national outlets. Cora's phone, a cheap prepaid cell, rang constantly. People wanted to help. Donations poured in. $5, $10, $20. Small amounts from people who had nothing to give, but gave anyway. Within a week, Cora had enough to pay the fines. Within 2 weeks, she had enough to bring the ranch up to code. Within a month, she had enough to hire a lawyer. The lawyer was a woman named Kelly Griffin. She was young, fierce, and angry. She took Cora's case for free. "This is harassment," Kelly said, reading through the county's notices. "They're targeting you because Caldwell wants your land. We're going to fight this." And they did. Kelly filed complaints. She demanded hearings. She brought in inspectors who confirmed that Cora's ranch met all safety standards. The county backed down. The fines were dropped, and Caldwell stopped coming. But Cora knew it wasn't over. Men like him didn't give up. They just changed tactics. She was right. 2 months later, she got a letter. It was from a lawyer representing Caldwell. It claimed that the original tax auction had been invalid, that the property had been sold in error, that Cora's deed was not legitimate. They were suing to void the sale. Cora sat in Kelly's office, the letter in her hand, feeling numb. Can they do this? Kelly read the letter. Her face was grim. They can try. It's a weak case, but it'll tie you up in court for months, maybe years, and legal fees will bankrupt you. So, what do I do? Kelly looked at her. You fight, or you settle. What would a settlement look like? You give up the ranch, he gives you money, you walk away. Cora's hands clenched. I can't. Kelly nodded. Then we fight. The case dragged on. Depositions, hearings, motions. Cora spent hours in Kelly's office, going over documents, answering questions. She missed work. She missed sleep. But she didn't miss a single feeding, a single training session, a single moment with Anchor and Dawn, because they were why she was fighting. One evening, as the sun set over the ranch, Cora sat in the paddock with Dawn. The filly, now nearly a year old, rested her head on Cora's shoulder. Anchor stood nearby, her eyes half closed, content. Ruth walked up, her expression serious. I got a call, Ruth said, from a journalist. She wants to do a follow-up story about the lawsuit. Cora sighed. I'm tired of stories. This one might help, Ruth said. She's from a big outlet, national. If people see what he's doing, the pressure might make him back off. Cora looked at Anchor. The mare had fought for her baby, against starvation, against abandonment, against impossible odds. And she had won. All right, Cora said, let's do it. The second story was bigger. It was featured on a major news network. It was shared millions of times. It framed Cora's fight as a David versus Goliath story, a teenager versus a wealthy developer. The public response was overwhelming. People were angry. They flooded Caldwell's office with calls. They protested outside the courthouse. They donated to Cora's legal fund. And Caldwell, facing a public relations nightmare, made a mistake. He gave an interview. He was dismissive, condescending. He said Cora was a child playing at being a rancher, that she'd be better off taking his money and moving on, that people like her didn't understand business. The backlash was instant. His investors pulled out, his permits were delayed, his projects stalled, and 3 weeks later, his lawyer called Kelly. They were dropping the lawsuit. Cora sat in Kelly's office staring at the document. It's over? It's over, Kelly said. You won. Cora walked out into the sunlight. She drove back to the ranch. She walked into the paddock. Anchor and Dawn looked up. Cora wrapped her arms around Anchor's neck and cried, not from sadness, from relief, from exhaustion, from the overwhelming, impossible realization that she had won. The ranch was hers, truly hers, and no one could take it away. The months that followed were different, quieter. Cora finished bringing the ranch up to code. She built a small cabin on the property, just one room, but it was hers. She had running water, electricity, a wood stove. She graduated high school online. She enrolled in community college, taking classes in animal science and business management. She started offering training services, gentle, patient work with difficult horses. Word spread. People brought her horses that had been abused, horses that had been abandoned, horses that no one else wanted. And Cora, with Anchor and Dawn by her side, helped them heal. Ruth became a partner. Together, they turned the ranch into a small, non-profit rescue. They called it Second Chance Ranch. Dawn, now 2 years old, became the heart of the operation. She was calm, gentle, intuitive. She worked with the traumatized horses, showing them that humans could be kind. That trust was possible. Anchor, older now, slower, spent her days in the pasture, watching over the herd. She was the matriarch, the protector, and she was finally, after so many years, at peace. One afternoon, Cora stood on the porch of her cabin, looking out at the ranch. The barn was repaired, the fences were strong, the pastures were green, horses grazed in the sunlight. Dawn trotted up, nuzzling Cora's hand. Anchor followed, slower but steady. Cora ran her hand down Anchor's neck. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not giving up, for teaching me how to fight." Anchor leaned into her touch, and Cora understood. She hadn't saved Anchor. Anchor had saved her. The mare had shown her what loyalty looked like, what strength looked like, what it meant to protect what you love, no matter the cost. And that lesson had changed everything. The ranch that Cora had bought for $3, the ranch that everyone said was worthless, had become a place of healing, a place of hope, a sanctuary for the broken and the forgotten. And it had all started with a skeletal mare, standing guard in a collapsing barn, refusing to let go. If this story moved you, if you believe in the power of second chances and the unbreakable bond between horses and the people who need them, please subscribe to our channel and share this story. Because every rescue starts with one person who refuses to give up, and sometimes that person is the one being rescued.